Commander Sarah Chen stood in the docking bay of Kepler 442b station and watched the metal doors slide open with a soft hiss. Beyond them waited representatives from 17 different species, all gathered to witness humanity's formal integration into the Galactic Council's military framework. She adjusted her uniform and stepped forward, her boots clicking against the polished floor. The aliens stared at her with various forms of eyes, sensors, and detection organs. Sarah had studied the files during the 6-month journey from Earth, but seeing them in person was different. The Vreks resembled massive praying mantises, their chitinous bodies gleaming under the station's lights. The Lumerians looked like walking crystal formations, their bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns. The depths were aquatic beings floating in containment suits filled with murky water. Dozens of other species filled the chamber, each one stranger than the last. Ambassador Trell stepped forward from the Vreks delegation. His translator device made clicking sounds before producing words in English. Commander Chen, welcome to Kepler 442b. We are honored to receive humanity into our shared defense network. Sarah nodded and extended her hand, then remembered most species did not share this gesture. She pulled it back awkwardly. Thank you, Ambassador. We're eager to begin cooperation. Trell's mandibles twitched in what the cultural database said was amusement. Yes, about that. The Council has requested a presentation of your military capabilities, standard procedure for new member species. Of course, Sarah said. What would you like to see? Combat simulations? Weapons demonstrations? A crystalline being stepped forward. High Warrior Crystallis spoke through vibrations that the translators picked up. We wish to understand your training protocols, how you prepare your warriors for combat. Every species has different methods. We learn much from this, Sarah felt relieved. This would be easy. Sure, I can show you our basic training programs. When would you like the presentation? Tomorrow, if possible, Trell said. We have prepared an observation theater for your use. Tomorrow works fine, Sarah agreed. She did not understand why several of the aliens seemed to shift nervously at her casual acceptance. What was the big deal about showing some training videos? That evening, Sarah sat in her assigned quarters and reviewed the footage she had selected. She had grabbed recordings from various Earth military organizations, showing standard basic training procedures, running drills, obstacle courses, hand-to-hand combat practice, and physical conditioning. Simple stuff that every soldier learned before moving on to specialized roles. Her communication console beeped. The face of Admiral Deathsinger appeared on the screen, the aquatic being's features distorted slightly by the water in its suit. Commander Chen, I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's presentation. Of course, Admiral. What can I help you with? I have been studying human history, Deathsinger said, its voice carrying a gurgling quality through the translator. Your species originates from what we classify as a Category 12 death world. The highest rating in our system, Sarah shrugged. Earth has its challenges, sure, but humans adapt. That's what we do. Yes, that is what concerns many of us. Deathsinger paused. Commander, please understand that most Council species evolved on worlds much gentler than yours. What you consider normal may be quite shocking to us. It's just basic training footage, Sarah said, confused by the warning. Nothing too intense. I made sure to pick the standard programs, not the elite special forces stuff. Deathsinger's large eyes blinked slowly behind the transparent material of its suit. I see. Well, I look forward to learning about human methods. Good evening, Commander. The screen went dark. Sarah sat back in her chair, frowning. Why was everyone acting so nervous about a simple training presentation? She had been expecting questions about human weapons or starship capabilities, not basic training procedures that every recruit went through. The next morning, Sarah entered the observation theater to find it packed with alien dignitaries and military officials. The room was designed like an amphitheater, with rows of seats rising up from a central presentation area. Various environmental controls allowed each species to maintain their preferred atmosphere in their designated sections. Good morning, everyone, Sarah said, her voice amplified through the room's speakers. Thank you for coming. Today I'll be showing you how humanity trains its military personnel. I've prepared footage from several different training programs to give you a broad overview. She noticed an elderly Vreks in the front row, his carapace darker than the others and marked with scars. His name was Clicking Talon according to her briefing notes, and he was a veteran of several galactic conflicts. He watched her with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. Let's start with the basics, Sarah said, activating the first video. This footage shows human recruits during their initial physical conditioning phase. The screen lit up with images of young men and women running across a training field. The camera followed them as they maintained a steady pace, their breath coming in rhythmic clouds in the cool morning air. Sarah heard a gasp from the Lumerian section. She paused the video. Is something wrong? Crystallis stood up, light refracting wildly through its crystalline body. Those are juveniles. They cannot be more than 0.3 cycles old. They're 18 years old, Sarah confirmed. That's the standard recruitment age on Earth. Some branches accept 17-year-olds with parental permission. But they are children. Another alien voice called out. Sarah felt confused. 18 is the age of adulthood in most human cultures. These are young adults, not children. Trell's mandibles clicked rapidly. Commander, most species do not begin military service until at least 0.8 to 1 full cycle of age. Your recruits appear to still be in developmental stages. Humans mature quickly, Sarah explained. Our lifespan averages 70 to 80 cycles, so 18 cycles is fully mature for military service. She noticed the aliens exchanging looks of surprise at the lifespan information, but decided to continue. Should I keep playing the footage? Clicking Talon made a gesture with his forelimbs. Please continue, Commander. We wish to understand. Sarah resumed the video. The recruits continued running, now climbing a hill. The camera showed them sweating, their faces red with effort but maintaining formation. How far are they running? Depthsinger asked. This is a 3-mile run, Sarah answered. A standard morning exercise, and when they do this every day? Usually 5 days a week, sometimes 6. Running is basic cardiovascular conditioning. She watched as more aliens leaned forward in their seats, their attention fixed on the screen. The recruits in the video finished their run and immediately began doing push-ups and sit-ups. Those movements, Crystallis said slowly, they are supporting their entire body mass against gravity. Your planet's gravity. Yes, Earth is 1.2 standard Gs, Sarah confirmed. Is that a problem? Most of our training facilities operate at 0.8 Gs for safety, Trell said quietly. 1.2 is what we would classify as high gravity conditions. Sarah blinked. But this is our normal gravity. We train in the conditions we'll fight in. Clicking Talon made a sound that the translator rendered as a thoughtful hum. They do this to their young, he said, more to himself than to Sarah. They begin with the young ones and make them strong. The video continued, showing recruits tackling an obstacle course. They climbed walls, crawled under barbed wire, swung across gaps and pulled themselves up ropes. Several stumbled or fell only to get back up and continue. A Lumerian in the third row suddenly dimmed and collapsed. Medical personnel rushed to assist as other aliens showed signs of distress. Sarah stopped the video, alarmed. What's happening? The Lumerian is overwhelmed, a medic explained. Sensory overload from the imagery. It will recover. Should I stop the presentation? No, Crystallis said firmly, though its voice wavered. We must see this. We must understand what humanity is. Sarah felt a knot forming in her stomach. She was only 10 minutes into the presentation, and already aliens were fainting. This was going to be a very long morning. Sarah waited while the medical team attended to the collapsed Lumerian. The crystalline being was carried out on a specialized stretcher, its body still flickering with dim, distressed patterns. She glanced at her prepared presentation timeline and realized she had barely started. The obstacle course footage was considered mild compared to what came later. Perhaps we should take a break, Trell suggested, his mandibles clicking nervously. No, Clicking Talon said from his seat in the front row, his old eyes fixed on Sarah with an expression she could not quite read. Continue, Commander. We came here to learn about humans. We must see this through. Sarah nodded slowly and resumed the presentation. This next section covers hand-to-hand combat training. All human soldiers learn basic fighting techniques regardless of their eventual specialty. The screen showed 2 recruits facing each other on a padded mat. An instructor demonstrated a technique. Then the recruits practiced it on each other. The movements were controlled but forceful. Punches, kicks, throws, and grappling holds. They are striking each other, someone in the audience said, voice filled with disbelief. Yes, it's sparring, Sarah explained. Controlled practice combat. They wear protective gear and the blows are pulled, but they need to experience real contact to learn properly. You deliberately cause your young ones to hit each other? Crystallis asked, its voice rising in pitch. This is training, not punishment? Sarah frowned. Well, yes. How else would they learn to fight? You can't learn combat from theory alone. You need practical experience. Depthsinger spoke up from its water-filled section. Most species practice combat through simulation or against automated targets. Physical contact between trainees is considered unnecessarily dangerous. But simulations don't prepare you for the real thing, Sarah protested. You need to know what it feels like to get hit, how to control your fear response, how to keep fighting when you're hurt. The silence that followed her words was heavy. Sarah saw Trell exchange a long look with several other ambassadors. She was starting to realize that what seemed obvious to her was profoundly alien to them. Let's move on, she said, changing to the next video. This shows a typical day in basic training from start to finish. The footage began before dawn. Recruits were woken by loud alarms and immediately rushed outside for morning physical training. The camera followed them through the 3-mile run, then calisthenics, then breakfast, then classroom instruction, then weapons training, then more physical exercise, then combat drills, then equipment maintenance, and finally evening formation before bed. How long is their day? Someone asked. About 16 hours of scheduled activities, Sarah answered, plus 8 hours for sleep, though they don't always get the full 8 hours depending on the training schedule. 16 hours, Depth Singer repeated slowly. Every day? For the duration of basic training, yes. It's usually 8 to 12 weeks depending on the branch of service. A small alien that resembled a fox with 6 legs stood up from its seat. Commander Chen, I must ask, what you are showing us is actual military training, correct? Not footage of warfare or punishment details? Sarah felt her patience beginning to fray. Yes, this is standard basic training. Every soldier goes through this or something very similar. This is how we prepare people for military service. But the difficulty level, the fox alien continued. The physical demands, the sleep deprivation, the constant stress. On my world, such conditions would only be found in actual combat situations. To deliberately create them for training purposes seems extreme. Earth is an extreme world, Sarah said simply. We train people to handle extreme conditions because that's what they'll face. Better to struggle in training than fail when it matters. She advanced to the next video, which showed recruits training in various environmental conditions. Desert footage showed them marching through sand in full gear under a blazing sun. Arctic footage showed them building shelters in deep snow with wind howling around them. Jungle footage showed them navigating through dense vegetation and oppressive humidity. Your planet has all of these environments? Chrystalis asked weakly. Earth has remarkable environmental diversity, Sarah confirmed. Deserts, tundra, jungles, mountains, swamps, forests, grasslands. Temperatures range from -40 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius in inhabited areas. Soldiers need to be able to operate anywhere. And you train them in all these conditions? We train them in multiple environments, yes. A soldier might need to deploy anywhere on Earth or on colony worlds with similar conditions. They need to know how to survive and fight in different climates. The next video showed water training. Recruits jumped into a pool in full uniform and equipment. The camera captured their struggles to stay afloat, to swim while wearing heavy boots and carrying rifles, to tread water for extended periods. Admiral Depth Singer made a sound of distress. That is drowning practice. You are deliberately putting them at risk of drowning. It's called drown-proofing, Sarah explained. They're learning to be comfortable in water even in difficult conditions. Instructors are right there to pull them out if there's any real danger. Look, you can see the safety personnel around the pool's edge. But why? Depth Singer asked. Why would you teach soldiers to struggle in water? My people live in water and we would never train this way. Because soldiers might need to cross rivers or survive if their ship goes down at sea, or conduct amphibious operations, Sarah said. Water covers 70% of Earth's surface. We can't just avoid it. She noticed that fewer aliens were watching the screen now. Many had turned away, unable or unwilling to continue viewing. Even Chrystalis had dimmed significantly, its crystalline structure looking cloudy and dull. Clicking. Talon remained focused on the presentation, his old eyes never leaving the screen. When Sarah glanced at him, he made a small gesture for her to continue. The next section showed night training exercises. Recruits navigated obstacle courses in complete darkness, conducted mock battles with only starlight for illumination, and practiced moving silently through forests at night. They train when they cannot see? Someone asked. They train with reduced visibility, yes. Night vision equipment helps, but they need to be able to operate in darkness. Enemy forces don't stop fighting when the sun goes down. Most galactic conflicts are conducted during optimal visibility conditions, Trell said quietly. Darkness is considered too dangerous for combat operations. We would withdraw and wait for daylight. Sarah stared at him. What if the enemy attacks at night? Then we defend from fortified positions with artificial lighting until dawn. But that gives them the initiative. They choose when and where to attack, and you just react. It is safer, Trell said, but he sounded uncertain. Sarah pulled up another video, this one showing recruits during a field exercise. They had been awake for over 30 hours, marching with heavy packs, conducting simulated combat operations, all while instructors created various problems and scenarios for them to solve. Sleep deprivation training, Sarah explained. Soldiers need to be able to function when they're exhausted. In real operations, you can't always sleep when you're tired. The mission continues. A new voice spoke up from the back of the theater. Commander, may I ask a question? Of course. What happens to recruits who cannot complete this training? Who cannot meet these standards? Sarah considered the question. They either try again, or they're assigned to different roles that better suit their abilities. Some people wash out of basic training. Not everyone is cut out for military service. And those who fail, they are not punished? Punished. No. Why would they be punished? Military service is voluntary in most human nations. If someone can't handle it or decides it's not for them, they go home. No shame in that. She could see the confusion on many alien faces. They seemed to struggle with the concept that humans would voluntarily subject themselves to such harsh conditions. And that failure resulted in simply going home rather than punishment. Let me show you one more thing, Sarah said, pulling up a final video for this section. This is footage from a civilian athletic event called an obstacle course race. People do this for fun. The screen showed thousands of humans running through mud, climbing walls, crawling under barbed wire, and jumping over fire. They were laughing, cheering each other on, celebrating when they finished. Many wore costumes or funny outfits. It was clearly recreational. The observation theater erupted in confused chatter. Sarah heard fragments of dozens of conversations in languages her translator could not quite catch. The aliens seemed more disturbed by this footage than anything that had come before. Crystalis finally spoke, its voice barely above a whisper. They do this to themselves willingly? For entertainment? Yes, Sarah said. Humans enjoy physical challenges. We like testing ourselves, pushing our limits. It's fun. Fun, Crystalis repeated, as if the word made no sense at all. Clicking Talon stood up from his seat. His movement silenced the chatter. Commander Chen, I think we need to take a recess. The council members need time to process what we have seen. Sarah nodded, relieved. Of course. How long would you like? 2 hours, the old Vrex said. And Commander, when we return, I would like you to explain something to us. The 2-hour break felt longer than it was. Sarah spent the time in a small conference room adjacent to the observation theater, reviewing her notes and trying to understand where the disconnect was happening. What seemed normal to her was clearly shocking to the assembled aliens. She needed to find a way to explain human military culture that would make sense to species who had evolved on gentler worlds. When she returned to the theater, she found it less crowded than before. Several species had chosen not to return, their representatives citing health concerns or cultural incompatibility with the material. Those who remained looked grim but determined. Clicking Talon sat in his usual front row position, and Sarah noticed that Admiral Depthsinger had moved closer to the front as well. Thank you for returning, Sarah began. Before I continue with more training footage, I want to address the question Clicking Talon asked. Why do humans train the way we do? She pulled up a new display, this one showing a slowly rotating image of Earth from space. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from this distance, beautiful even. This is Earth, she said, Category 12 Deathworld. But let me tell you what that really means. She zoomed in on different regions as she spoke. Earth has weather systems that can level cities. Hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. We have temperature extremes that can kill an unprotected human in minutes. We have thousands of species of predators, from microscopic parasites to animals weighing several tons that see humans as prey. The display shifted to show various Earth creatures: lions, bears, sharks, crocodiles, venomous snakes and spiders, wolves, and many others. For most of human history, we were not the dominant species on our planet. We were prey animals who survived through intelligence, endurance, and cooperation. We learned to hunt the hunters. We learned to outlast anything that chased us. We learned that the only way to survive was to be tougher than everything trying to kill us. Trell's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. But you are dominant now. You have technology. Why maintain such harsh training? Because our history taught us a lesson we'll never forget, Sarah said. Complacency kills. The moment you think you're safe is the moment you're most vulnerable. She pulled up historical footage, carefully selected to make her point without being too graphic. This is from Earth's 20th century. We had two massive global wars. Millions died. The nations that survived were the ones that could mobilize quickly, that had trained their people to be ready, that understood warfare. The aliens watched footage of soldiers training during World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and later conflicts. Sarah narrated each clip, explaining the context. These wars taught us that training has to be hard because war is harder. Every shortcut in training, every skill we don't teach, every challenge we don't prepare for, those things cost lives when real combat begins. She switched to a different video, this one showing a military rescue operation during a natural disaster. This is from a hurricane that hit our southeastern coast 15 years ago. These soldiers are rescuing civilians from flooded areas. The water is contaminated, full of debris, and dangerous. But because these soldiers trained in water, trained in extreme conditions, trained to function when exhausted, they saved thousands of lives. Depth Singer leaned forward. So your training is not just for war? No, Sarah confirmed. Military personnel respond to natural disasters, conduct search and rescue, provide humanitarian aid, and perform many non-combat roles. The physical and mental toughness we build in training applies to all of it. We train people to be ready for anything. She took a breath and continued. Now let me show you some of our specialized training programs. Remember, what you saw earlier was basic training that everyone goes through. These next sections are for specific roles. The first video showed underwater demolition training. Divers in full gear worked at depths that made several aliens gasp. They practiced with explosives, cut through obstacles, and conducted long-duration dives. These are combat divers, Sarah explained. They train for underwater operations in any condition. Ocean, river, lake, even flooded buildings. The next video showed soldiers parachuting from aircraft at high altitude. The camera followed them as they fell through the sky, pulled their parachutes, and landed in designated zones. Airborne training. Soldiers learned to jump from aircraft and conduct operations behind enemy lines or in areas with no other access. Mountain warfare footage came next. Soldiers scaled cliffs, crossed glaciers, and operated in thin air at high altitudes. Mountain troops train in extreme elevation and cold weather. Some of these exercises take place above 4,000 meters where the air is thin. Sarah watched the aliens carefully. They were clearly disturbed, but she noticed something else too. Depth Singer was taking extensive notes. Clicking Talon watched with an analytical expression. Even Chrysalis, despite its obvious distress, had not looked away. This next section may be difficult to watch, Sarah warned. This is survival training. The footage showed soldiers dropped into wilderness areas with minimal equipment. They built shelters from natural materials, started fires without matches, found and purified water, hunted or trapped small animals for food. Some clips showed them eating insects or plants that looked distinctly unappetizing. Military personnel learn to survive with nothing, Sarah said. If they're shot down or separated from their unit, they need to stay alive until rescue. So we teach them how. A small mammalian alien in the third row made a distressed sound. They eat living creatures raw? Usually they cook them, but yes, they learn to hunt and eat what's available. Humans are omnivores. We can digest a wide variety of food sources. The next section showed resistance training. Soldiers practiced being captured, interrogated, and confined in small spaces. The footage was carefully edited to avoid showing anything too harsh, but the message was clear. What is this? Chrysalis demanded. Why are you imprisoning your own people? It's training to resist if captured by enemies, Sarah explained. We teach soldiers how to withstand interrogation, how to maintain their mental strength if taken prisoner, how to survive captivity. It's based on real experiences of prisoners of war throughout our history. You simulate being captured, being questioned by enemies? Yes, because if it happens for real, we want our people to be prepared. We want them to know they can survive it. The silence in the theater was profound. Sarah could feel the weight of their stares, the incomprehension mixed with growing horror at what human training entailed. She pulled up another video, this one showing soldiers training with gas masks in a chamber filled with tear gas. This is chemical exposure training. Soldiers learn to trust their protective equipment by experiencing what happens without it, then putting it on and experiencing the difference. You expose them to poison? Trell asked weakly. Tear gas is not lethal, just extremely unpleasant. It teaches them to control panic, to remember their training even when experiencing pain and fear. Because in real combat, if chemical weapons are used, they need to act correctly the first time. Admiral Depth Singer spoke up, its voice thoughtful despite the gurgling quality of its translator. Commander, I am beginning to understand something. Your species does not train for optimal conditions. You train for the worst possible scenarios. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. We train for when everything goes wrong. When you're tired, hungry, scared, hurt, and still need to complete the mission. When your equipment fails. When you're outnumbered. When the situation looks hopeless. That's when training matters most. She pulled up one final video for this section. It showed a combat medic training program, where soldiers learned to treat injuries under simulated combat conditions. The footage included realistic wound simulation, soldiers applying tourniquets while being yelled at by instructors, practicing emergency procedures while running or crawling. Medical training happens under stress, Sarah explained, because real casualties happen during combat, not in clean, quiet hospitals. Medics need to be able to save lives while bullets are flying and everything is chaos. Clicking Talon stood slowly. His old carapace creaked as he moved. Commander Chen, may I share an observation? Of course. I have fought in 3 galactic conflicts. I have seen many species at war. I have trained warriors from a dozen different worlds. He paused, his mandibles clicking slowly. What you call basic training is more intense than the actual combat I have experienced in 70 cycles of military service. The theater erupted in chatter. Sarah waited for it to die down before responding. I don't think that's a criticism of your combat experience, Clicking Talon. I think it's a reflection of different philosophies. Most species train to operate in safe conditions and avoid danger. Humans train to operate when safety is impossible and danger is everywhere. But why? Crystalis asked, its voice almost pleading. Why push so hard? Why make it so difficult? Sarah thought carefully about her answer. Because easy training produces soldiers who break under hard conditions. Because if we train people to expect safety, they'll panic when things get dangerous. Because our history is full of examples where the better trained force won even when outnumbered. And most importantly, because we owe it to our soldiers to prepare them properly. Hard training saves lives in real operations. Sarah spent the evening in her quarters, unable to shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted during the presentation. She had simply shown them standard training procedures. Yet the aliens had reacted as if she had revealed some terrible secret about humanity. She reviewed the cultural briefings again, trying to understand the gap between human and alien perspectives on military preparation. Her console beeped. It was a message from Clicking Talon requesting a private meeting. Sarah accepted and waited as the old Vrex entered her quarters. He moved slowly, his ancient carapace showing wear from decades of service. Commander Chen, thank you for seeing me, he said, settling into a chair designed for his species. I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's session. Of course. What's on your mind? Today you showed us your basic training. Tomorrow you will show us more. But I need you to understand something first. He leaned forward. Most council species have never experienced real warfare the way humans have. We have conflicts, yes. Border disputes, resource competition, occasional battles. But nothing like what I saw in your historical footage. Sarah nodded slowly. I've been reading about galactic conflicts. They seem more limited in scope than Earth's wars. Because we are afraid, Clicking Talon said bluntly. We know war is terrible. We avoid it when possible. We limit it when it is not. The idea of total war, of complete mobilization, of fighting until one side is destroyed, this is nightmare fuel for most species. But humans have experienced that, multiple times. Yes, and it shaped how you think about preparation. The old Vrex's mandibles clicked softly. Commander, tomorrow when you show us more training, I need you to help the others understand something. Humans do not train this hard because you are violent. You train this hard because you are terrified of being unprepared. Sarah felt something click into place. You get it, I am old. I have seen enough war to understand fear. Your training is born from fear of failure, fear of losing, fear of watching your people die because you did not prepare them well enough. He stood to leave. Help them understand this tomorrow. Show them not just what you do, but why it matters. After he left, Sarah sat in thought for a long time. Then she began restructuring her presentation for the next day. When the observation theater filled the following morning, Sarah noticed the crowd was different. Some species who had left yesterday had returned. Others had sent different representatives, including several who her briefing notes identified as military historians and strategic analysts. Good morning, Sarah began. Yesterday I showed you our training methods. Today I want to show you why those methods exist. I want to tell you some stories. The lights dimmed and a new image appeared on the screen. It showed a memorial wall covered in names. This is from the Vietnam War on Earth over 70 years ago. There are over 58,000 names on this wall. Each one is a human soldier who died in that conflict. This wall exists in our capital city as a reminder of the cost of war. She let the image sink in, then continued. During this war, soldiers were sometimes sent into combat with inadequate training. The pressure to get troops into the field quickly meant training was rushed, and people died because they did not know what to do when things went wrong. The next image showed a different memorial. This is from World War II, over 400,000 names. One of the lessons we learned from this war was that specialized training saves lives. Paratroopers who trained extensively in airborne operations had better survival rates than those with minimal training. Soldiers who knew how to move under fire lived longer than those who did not. Chrystalis spoke up, its voice subdued compared to yesterday. You memorialize every death? We try to remember them all, yes, because forgetting would dishonor their sacrifice and make us more likely to repeat the mistakes that led to their deaths. Sarah pulled up footage of a modern training exercise, but this time she narrated it differently. This is cold weather training. We do this because 73 soldiers died from hypothermia during the Korean War, when their units were not prepared for extreme cold. We learned that soldiers need to know how to recognize and prevent cold injuries, how to operate equipment in freezing temperatures, how to survive when heating fails. The pattern continued. For each training method she had shown yesterday, she now explained the historical reason it existed. Water survival training exists because ships sink and aircraft crash into oceans. Soldiers have drowned because they panicked in water or did not know how to stay afloat with equipment. Combat first aid training exists because medics cannot reach everyone immediately. Soldiers need to be able to treat themselves and their teammates until help arrives. Land navigation training exists because communication equipment fails or gets jammed. Soldiers need to be able to find their way using maps and terrain features. Physical conditioning exists because combat is exhausting. Battles can last for hours or days. Soldiers who are not in excellent physical condition become liabilities to their units. Admiral Depthsinger interrupted. Commander, you're saying that every aspect of your training comes from actual failures? From people who died? Yes, military doctrine is often written in blood. We learn what works and what does not through terrible experience, and then we make sure future soldiers do not have to learn those lessons the same way. She brought up a new series of videos, these showing more recent training developments. This is stress inoculation training. Soldiers experience simulated combat with realistic sound, smoke, and scenarios. We do this because psychological collapse in combat is a real risk. Soldiers who have never experienced chaos, noise, and confusion are more likely to freeze or panic when it happens for real. The footage showed soldiers navigating through a complex scenario with explosions, shouting, and simulated casualties. The stress on their faces was evident, but they continued to function and complete their objectives. This looks like actual combat, Trell observed. That's the point. The more realistic the training, the less shocking real combat becomes. The soldier's brain has already experienced something similar, so it does not completely shut down from sensory overload. Clicking Talon spoke from his usual position. You are training them to function when their natural survival instincts are screaming at them to run or hide. Yes, because running or hiding gets you killed in combat. Controlled action, following training, working with your unit, these things improve your chances of survival. Sarah pulled up her next segment, which showed leadership training. Junior officers and non-commissioned officers were put through scenarios where they had to make decisions under pressure, often with incomplete information and no good options. Leadership training teaches decision-making under stress, because in combat, leaders have to make choices that affect other people's lives. Hesitation can be as deadly as a wrong decision, so we practice making hard choices in training environments where mistakes are not fatal. The scenarios were challenging. Leaders had to prioritize objectives, allocate limited resources, adapt to changing situations, and accept responsibility for outcomes. The stress was visible on their faces. These are young humans making these decisions, Depthsinger noted. Some appear barely past juvenile age. Leadership can fall to anyone in combat, Sarah explained. If senior leaders are killed or incapacitated, junior personnel need to be ready to step up. We cannot predict who will need to lead, so we train everyone to be capable of it. She moved to a new section showing teamwork exercises. Small units conducted operations that required precise coordination, communication, and trust. Human military training emphasizes teamwork because individuals cannot survive alone. We train units to function as cohesive groups, to cover each other's weaknesses, to trust each other completely. This bonding is essential to combat effectiveness. The footage showed soldiers literally trusting their lives to their teammates. From belaying each other during climbing exercises to covering each other during tactical movements. Chrystalis dimmed thoughtfully. You are creating artificial family units, bonds beyond normal social connections. That's a good way to describe it. Military units become like families. That bond is what makes soldiers willing to risk themselves for each other. It is what makes them continue fighting when logic says to give up. Sarah took a breath and pulled up her final segment, the one she had been building toward. Now I want to show you something different. This is not military training. This is why military training has to be so demanding. The screen showed footage of various human activities. Construction workers building skyscrapers, firefighters entering burning buildings, deep-sea oil rig operators working in storms, search and rescue teams climbing mountains in blizzards, emergency room medical staff during mass casualty events. This is what we call civilian life on Earth. Normal people doing dangerous jobs because those jobs need to be done. Notice the conditions they work in. The heights, the temperatures, the physical demands, the stress. She let the footage play for several minutes, showing the reality of life on a Category 12 death world. Earth is not a safe place. It has never been a safe place. Humans evolved to survive in an environment that constantly tries to kill us. Weather, predators, disease, natural disasters, and accidents are part of everyday life. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah's presentations ended. She had been expecting to return to Earth for new assignments, but instead she found herself in a waiting pattern at Kepler 442b station. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session, and she had been asked to remain available to answer questions. The summons came early one morning. Sarah was to appear before the full council assembly, not just the military committee. As she walked through the grand chamber doors, she saw representatives from over 100 species arranged in a massive amphitheater. The architecture was designed to accommodate the vast diversity of galactic life, with environmental zones for every type of being. Ambassador Trell stood at a central podium. His translator device amplified his voice to fill the chamber. We call this session to address the matter of human integration into Council military frameworks. Commander Sarah Chen, please step forward. Sarah walked to the designated position, feeling the weight of countless alien eyes upon her. The chamber fell silent. Commander Chen, Trell continued, your presentations have sparked considerable debate among the Council. We must now decide how to proceed with human military integration. Several proposals have been made. We wish to hear your response to each. A holographic display activated showing the first proposal. Proposal 1. Restrict human military participation to advisory roles only. Human training methods are deemed too extreme for integration with other species' forces. Sarah kept her expression neutral. May I speak freely? Please do. If you restrict humans to advisory roles, you are wasting our potential and your own. We did not join the Council to sit on the sidelines. We joined to contribute. If our methods seem extreme, perhaps the question is not whether they are too much, but whether your current methods are enough. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several ambassadors conferred with their aides. Trell nodded and displayed the second proposal. Proposal 2. Allow human military participation but prohibit humans from training other species. Maintain complete separation of training philosophies. That is better than the first option, Sarah said, but it misses an opportunity. You have seen our training. You understand why we do it. Some of those methods could be adapted for other species. Not everything we do would work for everyone, but some principles are universal. Preparation, repetition, stress inoculation. These things improve any soldier. Crystallis stood from its position in the assembly. Its crystalline body had regained its earlier brightness. Commander Chen, if I may ask a question? Of course. Could your training methods be modified for species with different physiology and psychology? Could they be adapted rather than adopted? Sarah smiled. Yes, that is exactly what I would suggest. You do not need to train in 1.2 g gravity if your species evolved in lower gravity. You do not need to do 3-mile runs if your species is not built for endurance. But the principle of physical conditioning can be scaled to any species. The principle of stress training can be adapted. The principle of learning from historical mistakes can be applied to anyone. Admiral Depth Singer's voice carried across the chamber. Commander, would humans be willing to work with other species to develop modified training programs? To share your knowledge while respecting our differences? That is what I would prefer, Sarah said. We did not come here to force our ways on others. We came to work together. If you want to learn from us, we are happy to teach. If you want to adapt our methods for your own needs, we will help. If you want to show us your methods and teach us new things, we are eager to learn. Clicking Talon rose from his seat slowly. The old Vrex commanded respect simply by standing, his scarred carapace testament to his experience. Council members, I wish to speak on this matter. Trell gestured for him to continue. The Council recognizes Clicking Talon. veteran of the Vrex Defense Forces. I have watched Commander Chen's presentations multiple times, Clicking Talon said, his voice steady. I have studied the historical context. I have consulted with military analysts from a dozen species, and I have reached a conclusion that some of you will find uncomfortable. He paused, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. We have been soft. For generations, the Council has enjoyed relative peace. Our conflicts have been limited. Our training has become comfortable. We train in optimal conditions and hope we never face suboptimal ones. We avoid danger in training because we hope to avoid danger in reality. The chamber stirred uneasily. But hope is not a strategy. Clicking Talon continued. The humans understand this. They hope for peace but prepare for war. They hope for optimal conditions but train for disasters. They hope their soldiers never need the skills they learn, but they make sure those skills are ingrained anyway. He turned to face Sarah directly. Commander Chen, I have a question. If the Council asked humans to train elite forces from other species, forces that would voluntarily undergo modified versions of your programs, would you do it? Sarah considered the question carefully. Yes, but with conditions. The volunteers would need to understand what they are signing up for. The programs would need to be adapted properly for each species, and there would need to be proper medical and psychological support. We would not simply throw aliens into human training and hope they survive. We would work with experts from each species to create appropriate programs. That is acceptable, Clicking Talon said. He turned back to the Council. I propose a compromise. Create a joint training initiative. Start small, with volunteers from species interested in learning human methods. Adapt the training appropriately. Monitor results. If it works, expand the program. If it does not, we have lost nothing but learned something. Trell's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this suggestion. This is not one of the prepared proposals. No, Clicking Talon agreed. But it is the right approach. We do not need to accept everything humans do, nor do we need to reject it all. We should learn, adapt, and improve. That is the purpose of the Council, is it not? To share knowledge and benefit from our diversity? The chamber erupted in discussion. Sarah stood quietly watching the debate unfold. She saw species she recognized arguing points she had made, saw others defending their traditional methods, saw still others proposing specific ideas for adapted training. After nearly an hour, Trell called for order. The Council will vote on Clicking Talon's proposal, all in favor of establishing a joint training initiative with human oversight and species-appropriate modifications. The voting system activated. Sarah watched as indicators lit up across the chamber. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for abstaining. The colors flickered and shifted as representatives made their choices. Finally, the count stabilized. Trell studied the results. The proposal passes with 73% approval. The Joint Training Initiative is authorized. Sarah felt relief wash over her. This was a better outcome than she had hoped for. Commander Chen, Trell said, you will be assigned to lead the human contingent for this initiative. You will work with representatives from participating species to develop appropriate training programs. Do you accept this assignment? I do, Sarah said without hesitation. Then this session is concluded. Implementation details will be worked out over the coming weeks. As the chamber emptied, several aliens approached Sarah. Crystallis was among the first. Commander Chen, I would like my species to be among the first participants. The Lumarian said, what you said about learning from fear, about training being born from respect for danger rather than love of violence. This resonates with me. My people have become complacent. We need to remember that safety is not the natural state of the universe. I would be honored to work with your people, Sarah replied. Admiral Depthsinger approached next. My species also wishes to participate. Our aquatic nature makes us think we are safe from many dangers. But your training showed me we have blind spots we never considered. One by one, representatives from various species expressed interest. By the time the crowd thinned, Sarah had commitments from 12 species to send volunteers to the first training program. Clicking Talon waited until last. When the others had left, he approached Sarah with slow, deliberate movements. You handled that well, Commander. Better than I expected. Thank you for your support in there, Sarah said. Your proposal made this possible. I am old, Commander Chen. I have seen much in my life. And I have learned that the species that survive are not the strongest or the most numerous. They are the ones that adapt, that learn, that prepare. He paused. Humans may be from a death world, but you are not defined by violence. You are defined by determination. By refusing to give up or give in. That is what impressed me. What made you understand that? Sarah asked. Most of the others saw only the harsh training. The part about the memorials, clicking Talon said quietly. The way you remember every name, every loss. Species that love war do not build memorials. They build monuments to glory. You build reminders of cost. That told me everything I needed to know about human values. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Commander. In 5 cycles, I will retire from active service. When I do, I hope to see the results of this training initiative. I hope to see Council forces that are stronger, better prepared, and more capable than they have ever been.